Good afternoon. Welcome back to this first afternoon sessions. It's always a challenge to have the first session in the afternoon after lunch, but the organizer is doing very well to us and give us a very beautiful room, and we have a very good sunny day. So I hope that after this conference, we can have some time out in the beach or somewhere under the sun. Yeah. But coming back to this panel, we have a very serious panel here. The title of this panel is Capacity Building for International Legal Corporations. I'm James Deng, a law officer in international law. I'm also the head of the international law divisions of the Department of Justice, and we stress the importance of capacity building a lot. Our department has done a lot of capacity building work, and we talk about international cooperation, international legal corporations a lot, but the question is, nobody will oppose international legal corporations, but how? How do we do this kind of international legal corporations? We can use bilateral agreements, we can have ad hoc cooperation, we can use multilateral instruments. There are different ways. But one of the key for successful and effective international legal corporations, as we see it, is capacity building. We need to have proper capacity building. We need to know how these, say, bilateral agreements, multilateral agreements work in practice, so that we can make the most of them. And that's why we see the importance of capacity building. And capacity building is important not only for developing economies, but also for developed economies, because it calls for a harmonized approach sometimes for interpretations of conventions or the practice of for the use of different international instruments. Today we have a very distinguished panel with us. Today we have all the three sister organizations present in private international presence here. We have Professor Dr. Bernasconi from the Hague Conference on Private International Law, the Secretary General. We have the Secretary General of UNICARIBE, Professor Tirado. We have Senior Legal Officer Neale from UNCITRAL. In addition, we also have experts from different regions. We have Nicolás from Colombia, and we have Ning from Hong Kong as well. I will introduce them later when I give them the floor. So I would just like to have an interactive session so that they will speak for about 10 minutes, give a presentations, and then we could have some Q&As after all the presentations. I hope that we can have a more interactive dialogue so that we can make the most of it today. So without further ado, I will now pass the floor to our first panelist, Dr. Bernasconi. Dr. Bernasconi is the Secretary General of the Hague Conference on Private International Law XCH since 2013. And he has been actively involved in numerous initiatives of the XCH, covering transnational litigations and postil, international family and child protection law, as well as commercial, digital, and finance law. He is a member of the advisory board of the Hague Project Peace and Justice Foundations and an honorary fellow of the Australian and New Zealand College of Notaries. He is also a member of the Hong Kong International Legal Talents Training Expert Committee, which advises on a lot of capacity building work of my department in Hong Kong. So I will now pass the floor to Christoph.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your kind words, James. Let me start by thanking wholeheartedly the organizers of the 2025 World Law Congress, and indeed the generous convener of this panel, the DOJ of the Hong Kong SAR, for the kind invitation to speak at this significant event. I'm delighted to contribute to our conversation on capacity building in international legal cooperation, a topic that sits at the very heart of what we do at the Hague Conference on Private International Law. For those less familiar with our work, the HCCH, as we call it these days, is the World Organization for the Unification of Private International Law. We fulfill this unique mandate by developing multilateral treaties. They are called the HCCH conventions, to which states can then become party. Examples include the Apostille Convention, the Child Abduction, Adoption, Child Support Conventions, the Service of Process, Taking of Evidence, Choice of Court Conventions, or the 2019 Judgments Convention, which deals with the recognition and enforcement of foreign judgments in civil or commercial matters. To date, we have achieved remarkable reach. Close to 160 states are involved in our work, and the total number of our ratifications or accessions to our instruments currently stands at 1,033, with another one coming up later this week. So all of this underlines the practical global impact of the work of the HCCH. But all of this comes with a responsibility to ensure that these conventions are not only negotiated and finalized, but that they are also properly implemented and that they work in practice in every legal system. A convention is only as strong as the system that supports it. Hence, the importance of capacity building. And this is where our post-convention services, as we call them, come into play. Now, I'm not saying that there is no capacity building component in the phase of negotiating a convention, because there obviously is also an exchange of experience and learning from each other. But I, for reasons of time, essentially focus on these post-convention phases of once the convention has been adopted. These post-convention services form the backbone of our engagement with the operators of our conventions, government officials, judges, lawyers, and other practitioners. Capacity building is an essential part of these post-convention services. It is not just the afterthought of cooperation, it is the architecture that sustains it. It is central to our mission. At the Permanent Bureau, which is the secretariat of the organization, post-convention services, in fact, account for 38% of our total time, making it the single most significant category of our activities, ahead of the development of new conventions or our general administrative operations. This alone shows how important capacity building is to the HCCH. So our activities in this regard include, for example, our, dare I say it, our famous special commission meetings on the practical operation of a convention, which is an absolutely essential and unique characteristic of the HCCH. These meetings essentially enable states to come together and to exchange experiences, address implementation and other practical operational issues, to learn from each other. These meetings are also open to states interested in joining an existing convention. So special commission meetings are a key element of practical capacity building based on states' involvement. They also enable states to adapt to new developments. For example, recent special commissions have tackled the digitalization in relation to the operation of the service and evidence conventions or the issuance of electronic apostilles. Again, capacity building through active exchanges of states' experiences. Then we have a whole series of practical handbooks and guides to good practice that relate to the implementation and practical operation of either an entire convention or to specific topics or issues that may be particularly relevant for a convention. These handbooks and guides complement the more technical explanatory reports available for each convention. And these handbooks and guides are developed by the Permanent Bureau with the input of governmental experts, judges, and practitioners. They are comprehensive, but they remain practical and accessible. And once finalized, they are endorsed by our members. They are thus an authoritative secondary source of law. These publications are continuously used by central authorities, judges, lawyers, and other operators involved in applying HCCH conventions. And occasionally, they are even quoted in decisions rendered by the state's highest courts. Recent examples of such publications include a guide on the grave risk exception of Article 13.1b of the Child Abduction Convention, or the upcoming 5th editions of the Service and Evidence Handbooks. And there are several other publications that we develop, such as implementation guides or checklists and country profiles, which also provide insights into how a given convention is implemented and operates in a particular jurisdiction. Again, very valuable sources of information for capacity building. And we have a series of cooperation agreements with universities from all parts of the world that we can also activate and include in our capacity building efforts. Then there are, of course, the seminars and workshops which we often organize jointly with states, including the PRC and the Hong Kong SAR, in this case through our regional office for Asia and the Pacific, ROAP, that we are pleased to operate in Hong Kong, thanks to the generous support of the PRC and the Hong Kong SAR. Actually, ROAP, the regional office, runs such a seminar tomorrow on the Judgments Convention with the involvement of experts from China, Japan, and the European Union. We often also take part in capacity building efforts organized by other international or regional organizations such as UNICEF, ALCO, APEC, ASEAN, CARICOM, the OAS, or the European Union. Non-governmental organizations such as the Asian Academy of International Law or the Asian Business Law Institute, or more recently the Hong Kong International Legal Talents Training Academy, I guess more on that a bit later, are also partners in these efforts. But whenever possible, we ask states with an experience in operating the relevant convention to take an active part in these events. And we invite other states from the same region to attend so that states hear from other states how they have gone about the implementation or operation of a convention. The goal is to have an exchange of real-life, practical experiences. I think that capacity building is particularly effective when it includes a segment of states talking to states. Of course, we at the Permanent Bureau, we also have an important role to play in this form of capacity building. In addition to the substantive knowledge, we often have unique comparative access to information from around the world, which gives us a very valuable comprehensive view. But it is always beneficial to have states exchanging their experience and practices with other states. Now, the deepest form of capacity building that we provide is what we call technical assistance, which in principle is available only to members of the HCCH. This priority access to technical assistance is one of the very practical advantages of being a member of the HCCH, as opposed to only being a contracting party to a convention. Recent examples include in-depth training provided to government officials, judges, and enforcement officers from Georgia on the 2007 Child Support Convention, or to government officials from Paraguay on the 1993 Adoption Convention. Technical assistance may also involve the deployment of a recognized expert identified by the Permanent Bureau to assist the state, sometimes for several months, helping to establish a central authority, review implementing legislation, or train all relevant operators. This technical assistance is paid for by the requesting state or through voluntary contributions from states that have an interest in seeing other states apply our conventions in the most effective way. This work is in fact so important that we even have a separate governance instrument approved by our members that establishes the framework and the circumstances within which we can provide such technical assistance, and which also expressly recognizes that technical assistance is part of the mandate of the HCCH. Who are the beneficiaries of all these post-convention capacity building efforts? In short, well, all key operators of our conventions. Central or competent authority officials, judges, lawyers, attorneys, social workers, and other professionals, depending on the scope of the convention. Ultimately, capacity building and thus the resulting effective operation of our conventions benefits the individuals behind the actual cases. A parent seeking the return of a child, a creditor needing cross-border maintenance enforcement, or a student urgently needing to produce his or her electronically apostillized diploma abroad. And before I close, allow me one final note on a very human form of capacity building that is particularly close to my heart. Under our internship program, we welcome talented young lawyers from around the world to learn from and contribute to our work. This internal capacity building has a long-reaching effect. It gives interns the opportunity to engage with international cooperation, and many return home committed to careers in international law. We like to think of them as members of a growing network of ambassadors of the HCCH, and for the idea that legal cooperation is not abstract. It is real, human, and essential. And even when coupled with capacity building, it is particularly rewarding as well. So capacity building is not charity. It is shared responsibility. Every time a convention functions well across borders, we all benefit. At the HCCH, we see capacity building not as an afterthought, but as core business, one that we share with states, legal professionals, and indeed the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph, for introducing the various work of the Hague Conference. And also you mentioned capacity building is a core business of the HCCH. And it takes different forms like special commission on practical operation of different conventions, technical assistance or publications in different forms, as well as internship. So we see that the Hague Conference really puts a lot of emphasis on the importance of capacity building. And as Christoph mentioned, capacity building is a shared responsibility. When the convention is operating well, all contracting states benefit. Yeah. So I will now pass the floor to our second speaker, Ignacio from UNICARIBE. Ignacio has been the Secretary of UNICARIBE since 2018. And he has been a senior legal consultant at the World Bank's legal vice presidencies and financial sector practice for more than 9 years. Also having been the consultant for the IMF on insolvency-related matters, as well as for the Asian Development Bank on commercial legal reform. He's also the founding member of the European Banking Institute and vice chair of the Conference on European Restructuring and Insolvency Law. And again, he's also a member of the Hong Kong International Legal Talents Training Expert Committee. So let's hear how UNICARIBE sees capacity building and what's the work of capacity building under UNICARIBE.
Thank you very much. So, the particular... I haven't earned it yet. Aún no me lo he ganado esto. So, particularly difficult task speaking after lunch and speaking after my learned and dear friend Christoph Bernasconi, who did such a beautiful and even poetic description of capacity building, which requires a lot of talent. I will not be as talented as him. I'd just like to first Agradecer a todos los dominicanos que han venido a escucharnos y a todos. Muchas gracias por el esfuerzo. And also to those who are not from here but who've come, we have here Professor Huang and Professor Pichonas. He represents the biggest private law organization in China, 1,500 million people, and he is the president of the European Law Institute, covering about 500 million people. That adds up a representation of 2 billion people represented in the room, so that's why they are sitting alone, and that's why it's quite scary to see them. Right, so I have some notes, but they've expired because I can't really read them very well anymore. But I think I know what to say. So UNISRA, the International Institute for the Unification of Private Law, is a Rome-based intergovernmental organization which is going to turn 100 years old next year. And we've been working on harmonization of private law since the League of Nations. What UNISRA does, like our colleagues from Bancetral and the Hague conferences, we try to create standards that governments will adopt through hard law and soft law instruments. And at least I speak only for my own organization, the instruments that we create, that we draft, are very technical, and they're zero political. They are not sexy at all, so they are not intuitive. Everyone has an opinion about human rights, about the way to choose politicians, but when it comes to the legal nature of factoring transactions, there is not so much interest. So the fact that it's extremely technical makes a difference in capacity building, and I'll explain why. Also, we do work on both private, hard law and soft law instruments. So hard law instruments would be treaties directly applicable by those ratifying or acceding states, while soft law instruments would be model laws, principles, legal guides. Being extremely technical and being being extremely technical and being soft law instruments, which are addressed not for direct application necessarily, but often they are meant for the legislator to take them and to implement them in the domestic system. That requires quite a lot of training, or at least quite a lot of explaining of how to do that. And we do have instruments like guides to enactment and other practice guides and instruments similar to what the Secretary General of the Hague Conference mentioned. But we do capacity building in different ways as well. Why is it important that we do capacity building for such technical, boring, but important instruments? Well, I'd like to tag on with a previous intervention. Professor Chow before taught us that the legal drafting and the reform of Chinese law, in private law in part as well, comes from the philosophical tradition of Confucianism and Taoism. So it's linked with the very philosophy of Chinese context, of Chinese context. Similarly, if you look at the German civil code, for example, which is a civil code which has influenced also the Chinese code, if I'm not mistaken, at some point, or it was taken into consideration, derives from the Pandekten, which were idealistic German philosophers interpreting Roman law, and idealism in German is, of course, directly linked with the historical understanding of the society. So Germans do that, Chinese do that, the Chinese incorporate what the Germans did to some extent, which is difficult to make, it's a difficult, complex transplant to undertake. What we do is we produce a venue to create instruments which facilitate that syncretism, the reaching a point of convergence with instruments that any legal family can accept, which are not a direct incorporation of either the law of China or the law of the United States or the law of Germany. So why I'm saying this? Because our instruments provide an international perspective which requires capacity building in itself, so that someone that's been trained in our instruments, and I think the same would apply to the instruments of our sister organizations, would be all around total international jurists, because they would be looking at things from the perspective of a framework which is the result of convergence from the different legal systems. So it's actually an extremely useful type of capacity building that we can provide, I think, all three of us really, but I speak only for myself, sorry, for our organization. So how do we do that? And we do that, UNISRA has quite a tradition, academic tradition. It's a very academic organization from its foundation. It's perhaps the first legal think tank in history. It was created as a venue to bring the most brilliant professors from the League of Nations to come and think about new ways to produce instruments which would allow cross-border exchanges and therefore allow the economies to grow and make countries happier so they wouldn't wage war. That gave us the reason to have a library. Our library has more than 400,000 titles, books of comparative law. And that explains why professors, researchers, interns as well, come from all over the world to Rome to study in our library. And that's where we do some capacity building on our instruments, which we think is quite fruitful. Also because then when they go back to their country, they are our ambassadors in the country as well, in a good way. So we don't have a lot of money to do things directly with the government, but we have the people that come to us and then go back. And so it's kind of a romantic way of providing capacity and getting a reward, which is them acting for us abroad. We also, in a way similar to what was expressed before, have capacity building in a way which mingles or is blurred with technical assistance. And we do that in similar ways to what Secretary General Bernasconi just explained. So on the one hand, we do liaise directly with countries. We don't have enough funds to do technical assistance directly very often, but we do respond to the queries. We do provide some guidance as to how to incorporate our instruments. So there's a direct relationship with member states and non-member states, because we also, if a country that's not a member asks us for help, we do provide it, obviously, because what we want is that our instruments are used. Second, we do this through glorified intermediaries. This is an interesting thing. We work very closely with the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and international financial institutions that go to countries and help the countries modernize their legal system. In order to avoid conflicts of interest, they normally wouldn't use their own instruments in advising legal reform in the country, but they would use our instruments. So it's by elevation, because our instruments are independent, and we have absolutely no specific interest in any particular lending operation. It's easier for them to recommend our instruments than it would be to recommend their own instruments. So that they act as a vehicle to incorporate our instruments in many countries around the world, and that capacity building is something we do together with them as well in many aspects. And then, this is I think a quite unique thing, we also work with private sector stakeholders. We produce instruments which are, because they're technical and they refer to economic law mostly, that are not beautiful pieces of law to be left in a drawer with no one using them. We, in order to avoid that horrible nightmare, what we try to do is produce instruments which are useful from the beginning, and in order to do that, we incorporate the industry and those that need to apply it to the decision-making process and the drafting of the instrument. Then, so that's the ex-ante participation of private laws, the private stakeholders in the drafting. Once we have that, we have had examples of private sector collaboration in the, I wouldn't say technical assistance, but at least in the implementation stage of our instrument. So there is this thing that we produce called the Cape Town Convention on International Interest of Mobile Equipment. Again, not very sexy, but extremely important. This treaty is able to mobilize financing for almost 60% of the entire aircraft leasing industry. So it has produced transactions with collateral registered in the international registry for over $1 trillion US. So not bad. And this treaty has been now ratified by 88 states, is monitored in its implementation by a website created by the Aviation Working Group. The Aviation Working Group is the industry it's the Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, Canadair, all the industry that applies that, and the financiers. It's not directly linked with us, but we see it happening. They've set up this website where they give grades to countries depending on the level of adequacy in their implementation of the treaty. So they rank countries. If a country has a 90 over 100, anyone who wants to invest in the country will know that the treaty is complied with. But if it's downgraded, as it happened recently in a very big country, by 20 points, the message that this is sending to the market is this country is not reliable in the implementation of the treaty. Therefore, caveat creditor, be informed of this. And the truth is, we've seen that country that was downgraded, very big country, changed the law following this, and that has been upgraded back up to 90. And so implementation of the treaties can also happen through the self-management of the private stakeholders that have to benefit from the instrument. So this is something which is not related to us formally, but we see it with interest. And I know I should finish. I like to say that because of what I said, this capacity building creation in transnational law, in the international law perspective, is linked directly with the wonderful initiative of Hong Kong's Special Administrative Region Department of Justice and the Legal Talents Initiative, which is such an important endeavor and which signals the way for capacity building, which will be able to create a new generation of jurists that have that superior overview of the law that will allow them not only to understand their own national law, but the laws of other countries because they were trained in transnational law. So with that note of recognition to Hong Kong's initiative, I'd just like to thank you for your attention. And again, muchas gracias a todos por la atención.
Thank you, Ignacio. You mentioned about all those work done by UNICARIBE. You have 400,000 publications of comparative law in your library. That's very remarkable. And he also mentions about the importance of capacity building, especially for these technical natures conventions, and also because this convention is different from national law. National law, maybe there could be different experts in different countries, but this convergence of different legal system is, the convention is usually a compromise between common law, civil law, and different legal systems, and this is something new. And capacity building is particularly important for these kind of new instruments because they do not exist in the past. It's something new, and it's not difficult to imagine there could be different ways of interpreting these different instruments, and so capacity building is very important for the smooth operation of these instruments, whether it's hard law or soft law. And now we have heard two organizations, and our third organization is UNCITRAL. My department also works very closely with UNCITRAL, and we have established a DOJ project office for collaboration with UNCITRAL. And today we have a new senior legal officer from UNCITRAL speaking to us. He worked previously as an attorney advisor of the U.S. State Department, and he also worked in the UNCITRAL trial before, and now he's the senior, and also UNICARIBE as well, and he's now the senior legal officer of UNCITRAL. Yeah, Neale, you have the floor.
He was downgraded.
Thank you, Dr. Ding. And it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with all of you. And it's not often that I speak after not one, but two Secretary Generals. So I don't do this type of thing as often as they do, so please bear with me. As Dr. Ding said, my name is Neale. I'm a senior legal officer in the United Nations Office of Legal Affairs, International Trade Law Division. The division is based in Vienna, Austria, and serves as the secretariat of what's known as UNCITRAL, the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. I am honored to have the opportunity to be here at the kind invitation of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, and on behalf of my boss, the UNCITRAL Secretary, Ms. Anna Joubin-Brett. I would offer the following remarks on the need for capacity building for international legal cooperation, in particular with some examples from UNCITRAL's perspective. So first, I would make three introductory points about UNCITRAL. First, UNCITRAL was established by the United Nations General Assembly in 1966. It is the core legal body in the United Nations in international trade law. UNCITRAL works to support removing or reducing obstacles in laws governing international trade through the progressive harmonization, unification, and modernization of such laws. It does so by preparing texts such as conventions, model laws, legislative guides, rules, or notes in key areas of commercial law, and promoting their use and adoption. These texts are generally negotiated by member states of UNCITRAL, which are elected by the General Assembly, and of which there are up to 70, as well as non-member states and invited intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations. As a result of this inclusive process, UNCITRAL texts are widely accepted as offering solutions appropriate to different legal traditions and to countries at different stages of economic development. UNCITRAL has developed texts in diverse areas of commercial law, including dispute resolution, electronic commerce, sale of goods, MSMEs, insolvency, security interests, public procurement, and transport law. Second, a main element of UNCITRAL's mandate is to coordinate the work of organizations active in the field of international trade law and to encourage cooperation among them. This is essential to avoid duplication of efforts and promoting efficiency, consistency, and coherence in international trade law. Third, UNCITRAL contributes to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, which were endorsed by all United Nations member states in 2015 and recently reaffirmed in the Pact for the Future. UNCITRAL regularly details how its work promotes the rule of law at the national and international levels and supports achievement of the SDGs in annual public reports to the General Assembly. For our purposes today, I would highlight SDG number 17 on partnership, which emphasizes the need for enhancing international support for implementing effective and targeted capacity building in developing countries to support national plans to implement all of the goals. The goals themselves thus recognize the need for capacity building. In some states, for instance, policymaking and legislative work has not kept pace with developments in international commerce and finance. Some states may have laws suitable for regulating commerce, but the economic impact can be limited when there is insufficient local capacity. Indeed, adequate local capacity to enact, implement, apply, interpret, and enforce sound commercial law frameworks is necessary for the expected benefits of rule-based commercial relations and international trade to accrue. Local capacity to develop and implement commercial law reform should not only be built, but regularly reviewed in response to evolving challenges, business practices, and technological developments. UNCITRAL supports the building of local capacity in various important ways. One way is through its own working methods, both with respect to current legislative and exploratory work. With respect to current legislative work, stakeholders from various countries and systems regularly come together to participate in UNCITRAL's working groups, at which they debate and collectively together develop legislative texts. Active participation significantly contributes to understanding the benefits of using UNCITRAL text to facilitate commercial law reform. It enhances understanding of how the consensus reflected in those texts was reached, as well as the solutions to legal obstacles that the texts offer. The working group sessions serve as an important platform for exchange of best practices with counterparts from diverse professional and geographical backgrounds. As a practical example of what I'm describing, I would point to UNCITRAL's Working Group 3, which is currently working on investor-state dispute settlement reform. The working group sessions regularly bring together between 300 to 600 stakeholders from across the globe. Participations in the discussions is greatly enhancing understanding of the investor-state dispute settlement system, its challenges, and reforms. In the context of Working Group 3, I would note 2 points. First, UNCITRAL remains grateful for the support of the Department of Justice of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and the Asian Academy of International Law, which co-organized an intersessional meeting of the working group in Hong Kong in 2021. Through such intersessional meetings, which have taken place around the world, including here in Santo Domingo in 2019, the working group has been able to benefit from additional time to further consider key reform elements and to reach a greater number of participants. Second, the UNCITRAL Commission adopted in principle this past summer the statute of the Advisory Center on International Investment Dispute Resolution, one of the elements of investor-state dispute settlement reform developed by the working group. The aim of the Advisory Center that is to be established is to provide training, support, and assistance regarding these types of disputes to build capacity of states to prevent and handle such disputes. With respect to exploratory and possible future work, UNCITRAL is, for instance, collaborating with the Hong Kong Department of Justice on an initiative that is taking stock of the latest developments in online dispute resolution. The initiative, entitled Inclusive Global Legal Innovation Platform on Online Dispute Resolution, is composed of 26 experts from around the world representing diverse legal traditions, including academics and practitioners, such as our fellow panelist, Professor Pimiento. While not a core aim of the work, the initiative nevertheless supports capacity building through its collection of detailed information from service providers of platform-based online dispute resolution in various jurisdictions and facilitates discussions on this topic, including with respect to possible future work by UNCITRAL in this area. UNCITRAL also supports capacity building for international legal cooperation through its technical assistance program. The program has 3 main goals: raising awareness and promoting the adoption of UNCITRAL texts, providing assistance to states for commercial law reform, and building capacity to use and implement UNCITRAL texts through various activities. Focusing on capacity building in particular, UNCITRAL makes an extensive set of resources available on its website for capacity building purposes. UNCITRAL has a set of e-learning modules which seek to provide teaching and training materials. UNCITRAL also offers the case law on UNCITRAL text database that's known as CLOUT. The CLOUT database, for instance, was established to support consistency in decisions and awards addressing or involving UNCITRAL texts or laws based on such texts. It currently includes more than 2,200 cases from 88 jurisdictions worldwide. The CLOUT database thus operates as a key tool to support continued and sustained capacity building for legal professionals in the use, interpretation, and implementation of UNCITRAL texts. UNCITRAL also regularly supports the holding of conferences, workshops, seminars, and lectures for capacity building purposes, together with other purposes, such as promoting those texts and seeking stakeholder input on them. The UNCITRAL Secretariat cooperates with a range of partners to maximize the impact of capacity building efforts in a cost-effective manner. I would like to provide 5 quick examples before concluding. First, the biennial UNCITRAL Asia Pacific Judicial Summits are one example. They are co-organized by the Hong Kong Department of Justice and UNCITRAL's Regional Center for Asia and the Pacific, which is based in Incheon, Korea, and benefits from the support of both the government of the Republic of Korea and the Hong Kong SAR. The summits bring together judges, government officials, legal practitioners, academics, and other professionals from various jurisdictions to discuss UNCITRAL texts, ongoing legislative work, and developments in related areas. The 6th summit is to be convened in Hong Kong in the 4th quarter of this year. Second, UNCITRAL organizes what's known as UNCITRAL Days in various regions, such as in Latin America and the Caribbean. The 5th edition of UNCITRAL Days in Latin America and the Caribbean took place in 2024 and entailed 33 hosting ministries, universities, and training schools for government officials in 15 countries. Third, UNCITRAL has co-organized annually what is known as the UNCITRAL Academy, together with Singapore. The most recent iteration comprised a conference and capacity building workshops to raise awareness of UNCITRAL texts and ongoing work in the area of dispute resolution and to provide training. It brought together participants from more than 100 countries. Another UNCITRAL Academy is envisioned for the 4th quarter of this year to be co-organized with Saudi Arabia and focusing on judicial capacity building in UNCITRAL insolvency texts across Arab states and in Africa. Fourth, with gratitude to fellow panelist Dr. Yang, UNCITRAL recently collaborated with the Hong Kong International Legal Talents Academy, co-organizing in March a conference on climate change and international trade law. This conference consisted of panel discussions on sustainable supply chains, insolvency, and dispute prevention and settlement. During the APEC meeting in Korea later this year in August, UNCITRAL and the Legal Talents Academy are going to collaborate again to co-organize a workshop on use of international instruments to legally enable end-to-end digitalization of trade. Fifth, I would mention a final important example in the area of secured transactions, which Secretary General Tirado had mentioned, and that's the Joint Network for Coordinating and Supporting Secured Transactions Reform. The Joint Network seeks to facilitate the enhancement of secured transaction frameworks, particularly through the adoption and implementation of international standards. It coordinates the activities of participating organizations and is an important forum for providing technical assistance and capacity building to states and organizations in this area. With recognition to both Secretary Generals on this panel, the Joint Network includes among its members UNIDROIT, the Hague Conference, as well as the Organization of American States, the Asian Development Bank, and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The Joint Network's 8th Conference on International Coordination of Secure Transactions Reform is to be organized in the 4th quarter of this year. And so to conclude, in these ways and others, UNCITRAL works to support the strengthening of local capacity and expertise to carry out commercial law reform at the country level and the implementation of legal frameworks that facilitate commerce, promote sustainable development, enhance international legal cooperation, and support peace and security. UNCITRAL works in collaborations with partners, such as the Hong Kong DOJ, the Secretariats of the Hague Conference and UNIDROIT, in order to achieve these important goals in a cost-effective manner. I would encourage participants, colleagues, students to seek out more information about UNCITRAL on our website or to reach out to the UNCITRAL Secretariat or to me. With that, I would like to thank the chair, Dr. Ding, for proposing and moderating this panel on this important topic, and my fellow panelists for their contributions and insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neale. So we have heard UNCITRAL has been doing a lot on capacity building, also in different forms, for working groups, database, publications, and also currently exploring the possibility of setting up an advisory center on ISDS. So all these efforts prove the importance or the strong demand for capacity building. And he also mentioned about a number of events in different parts of the world, including some to be held in Hong Kong. The biennial judicial summits Neale just mentioned will be held in the first week of December in Hong Kong, and we welcome you to participate. And more information will be available on UNCITRAL website and also our website later. Yeah. So enough for these three sister organizations. So we have heard the Hague Conference and UNICARIBE and UNCITRAL. Now we have also speakers from these parts of the world in these regions. And our next speaker is Professor Nicolás Lozada Pimiento. He's an associate professor at the Faculty of Law of the University of Externado of the Colombia. And he's also the CEO and founder of Queer and Financial Inclusion Platform, empowering women on informal transactions, and WIDEC, the first Colombian digital justice and online dispute resolution startup. He's devoted to promoting the use of technology in justice. And he currently lectures on digital justice, legal tech, dispute resolution design, online dispute resolution, arbitration, and alternative dispute resolutions. Again, he's also a member of the Hong Kong International Legal Talents Training Expert Committee. So we have many of our experts here. So I will pass the floor to you, Nicolás.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ding. I'm very happy to be here and to be the representative of the region of the Latin America. So muchas gracias de verdad a todos por tenernos acá, muy queridos. And I would like to elaborate a bit more after, following the presentation of my illustrious colleagues from the three sisters, the three most important international organizations for unification and harmonization of international private law. And then I would like to bring a twist to what we are discussing, and it's how we define capacity building and how we can do capacity building through technology. So, of course, most of what we've heard over the last hour is how we make people learn and provide, transfer that knowledge in order for public servants or even people in the private sector to really implement international instruments or international law in general. But my experience over the last few years is that many of those instruments, even if it's also domestic legislation, turns into workflows, legal workflows. And then what I want to bring today is how technology can help you do a better capacity building exercise, and how by using technology, and in the previous panel on the China modernization, I think China and Hong Kong have been both very efficient and very smart on how to do that and how to really transform their legal systems by the use of technology. So ideally, when you have a legal team, regardless if you are a public entity, an organization, a company, you want to bring innovative experiences to the people working on it, basically lawyers most of the time. But then that should mean an operational redesign, transforming the way the legal matters are managed. And that you can do through technology, through platforms, through automation, through artificial intelligence. And also one thing that it's very complicated for us lawyers, and it's making things more simple. So we're masters at complex processes, and that's part of our knowledge and part of our added value. But our mission should be to make things simpler, to bring justice to the people. So if you can simplify documents, if you can simplify legal workflows, if you can really bring access to justice to people, you will get a legal transformation. So that's what we call the digital legal transformation, how you can bring all of what we've seen over the last 25 years in the 21st century, and how we can approach legal processes in a friendly and understandable way. So the way I see technology being applied to capacity building is in 4 stages. The first one is training, of course, and then if you are implementing a new technology, you have to train people on it so they can use it properly. Then you have to do a co-design. You have to design with people how you can make new processes. But of course, you will need an assessment So you cannot design without having a proper assessment of what's going on in terms of technology, and finally having a proper implementation of those legal flows. Finally, what you will get is a better integration. So you have several technologies and they will be integrated into a single one. You will have optimization, workflow improvement from what you're getting, a better identification of your actual needs and how you can improve in your day-to-day basis, and of course, unleashing time so that you can do high added value tasks. That's what you want to do. So at the end, capacity building means being more able to do something, and technology and integrating platforms and automation will make huge steps in that direction. So let's start into the training, and that's how usually those digital legal transformation processes start. So then you will get, okay, I want to know what's artificial intelligence. And I would say that this exercise of ours, that the World Law Congress, what we're doing is capacity building. We're all learning a bit more, and we're trying to get more skills for our work. So applying that into technology, usually specialized training looks into developing skills at a better use of technology. For instance, something that's really demanded nowadays is prompt engineering. So people would like to know more, and what happens if I use ChatGPT? What are the consequences? How can I do better prompts? So that's also very important. Or also legal design. I want to find out how to do a better design of my contract, or how to do a better design of my legislation. And then automation. So what processes are inefficient? So what can technology do for me if I can, use Power Automate or use Microsoft or any of the tools available in the market to improve my process. But the first step will be learn about it. And then I can bring up an experience we recently had with the District of Medellin. So you must have heard Medellin is the second most important city in Colombia, and they are called themselves from a few years a District of Science, Technology, and Innovation. So they want to be the pioneers in doing that. And we were approached by the Secretary General. They're the ones who deal with the legal matters. And the first thing they wanted to do is that they wanted to learn something in alignment with their modernization strategy. So you will get a lot of public agencies, and I think that will be requested more and more. And they wanted to know how their lawyers, their professionals, the ones that they're dealing with thousands of lawsuits on education, on health matters, on administrative matters, how to adopt those legal tools, and how to do prompt engineering, or how to do, or which processes were subject to potential automation. So then, learning about something, of course, it's a very good first step, but technology is more interesting in the sense that you can bring those knowledge, those data, that information, and turn it into a new process. So for the assessment, that will be the second step on this journey towards digital legal transformation. So you have to understand what's the state of the art of the technology that's being used at the moment. So if you can analyze the technologies they have, so with Medellin, but we also did with the Superintendency of Corporations, the authority in charge of the overview of the functioning of companies in Colombia. Looking into what they were doing, and some of their systems were outdated, so from the 90s or from the early 2000s. So look into how they would look into present workflows. So that assessment in itself, it brings a lot of new information towards what the agency is doing at the moment. And of course, looking into operational requirements, so maybe I will need this or that new technology, or I will need to do this or that integration, or I will need to get rid of that system that no longer works. So that will turn into a roadmap. So having a roadmap of what you want to do, and then you have technology modernization, and then you have digital legal transformation in mind. Well, having that assessment is extremely important towards that end. Our result, the way we did it with the superintendents of companies in Colombia is that we were working along with the UNODC, the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime, and the result was very interesting because it was related to transnational bribery. They wanted to improve the workflows of the team in charge of transnational bribery in Colombia into virtual ecosystems. So virtual ecosystems is what the public servant, the person at the superintendents was working on a day-to-day basis. So Microsoft, Office, and the document management system that they already had in place, and look into potential process automation, what workflows were subject to having a better efficiency or optimization, and finally thinking or perhaps looking into potential digital platforms. With that general assessment, then you can look into the future of the organization, in this case, the superintendents of companies, and you can go to the third step or to the third stage of capacity building, which is, in this case, having methodologies and understanding the user needs in co-design. So once you get a better assessment, then you can design along with the public servants and with the agency what the needs are with their day-to-day needs. Because sometimes you can do an assessment from the outside, but you won't get the information or you won't get the real needs. And then if you don't work with the people who are involved, you won't get this adherence. So people won't be as prone to adapting and adopting those technologies as their own. So if you want to have an impact with any technology implementation, you need to have all the stakeholders, but particularly the recipients of any technology involved, co-designing along with in this capacity building exercise. And then you gain really interesting insights that you won't get otherwise. At the end, you end up finding out that they are the real experts. They really know how to do things. And these collaborative methodologies, understanding the needs, of course, turns into better results. And an example that I can bring on how this has been done in Colombia is with the Grupo Energía Bogotá. The Energy Group of Bogotá, it's one of the main electricity companies, not only in Colombia, but also in Latin America. They work in Central America and in South America as well. And with the co-design sessions, we found what the legal vice presidency was needing to implement not just attention to litigation, which is what many of their legal teams do, but preventive work. So they had this policy on relevant legal risks that was turned into a platform through co-design. So it was not just an outsider's vision on what they needed. They had a clear vision, and they co-designed a technological tool which ensured that the platform accurately addressed their needs and the communication, the traceability that they were looking for. And finally, if you go to a fourth step of this capacity building, then it's implementation. So you've already trained, you have an assessment, you have a bit of the co-design sessions, but then you get into the hardest part, which is really implementing new tools. And these tools are usually customized. So if you want to do the exercise properly, and then that's how you get the proper knowledge transfer, but also the continuous support, because when you have a technology in place, that technology that you've helped designing as a public agency or a private company, then it's yours already, and the capacity building is done every time you use this tool. So having this context-specific adaptation, it really helps to really make it operational and make it easier for the final users, more people involved. As experience on that, we worked along with external university. The university I work for, having students helping Telefónica, which is a telecommunications company that operates in Colombia, to resolve consumer disputes on telecom. And it was really interesting to see how, in this case, online dispute resolution could bring a much better experience for consumer protection and for the people involved. So altogether, in conclusion, how can you really get this digital legal transformation? Well, 100% user-centered design, thinking of artificial intelligence and automation, having, of course, practical training, but including co-design and proper implementation. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicolás. Thank you for sharing the experience of Colombia, and also you give us a different perspective about how we do capacity building. You mentioned capacity building through technology, and you identify 4 different steps: technology training, organization assessment, co-design workshops, and implementation of the new tools. So thank you very much for giving us this different perspective. I think that capacity building through technology will be increasing given the rapid rise of our modern technology. So we have to give different ways of thinking how we can better use technologies to do capacity building. For example, different organizations, they are already using their websites, maybe databases. I think there are also probably new tools in the coming future. Now we move to our last speaker. Last but not least, is my colleague, Dr. Ling Yang. She is currently the director of the Hong Kong International Legal Talents Training Office, and she was admitted to the Chinese Bar in 2004 and was former Deputy Secretary General of the Hong Kong International Arbitration Center. Before that, she was an associate professor at the East China University of Political Science and Law, and she was also a visiting professor in France and US, and she published widely on issues of international dispute resolutions and arbitration in China. So without further ado, I will pass the floor to Ling.
Thank you, Dr. Ding. Good afternoon, everyone. As Dr. Ding just mentioned, I'm Ling Yang from the Hong Kong International Legal Talents Training Office. I believe all the panelists before me just mentioned this training academy. So today it's my great pleasure to introduce this academy. But before that, I would like to call back some questions in the morning. In the morning, I attended the first session on ADR. There is one of the audience raised the question to all the panelists. The question, if I remember correctly, was that how the Republic, Dominican Republic, can raise the awareness and to change the mindset about the litigation to arbitration. I remember one of the panelists, Mr. Craig Hansen, answered this question in different ways. But for me, if the lady who raised the question this morning is here today, I think she already got the answer from my panelist. I cannot find a better way to answer this question. How to change the mindset from legal practitioners, from litigation first to ADR first. So the answer is quite simple and strict. Capacity building. This is capacity building. It's not just for judiciary, for legal practitioners, for political policy makers, also for legislators. So especially for Dominican Republic. Today, it's our great pleasure to be here for the World Law Congress today. I think for all the nations and the jurisdictions who want to be this jurisdiction, become a preferred seat in arbitration. I think capacity building is the first and the most efficient way to raise the awareness of to change the mindset from the litigation first to arbitration first. So I think this is something that I want to comment this morning, but I want to comment today before I start my introduction to the academy. As some of my distinguished panelists just mentioned that Hong Kong International Legal Talent Training Academy, this new initiative was established by the Hong Kong Department of Justice, the Hong Kong SAR Special Administrative Region in October of 2024, capitalizing Hong Kong SAR's distinctive advantages under the one country, two systems principle, and enjoying strong support from the motherland and being closely connected to the world. The Academy was officially launched on 8th November 2024 during the 2024 Hong Kong Legal Week, the annual flagship event of the Department of Justice of Hong Kong. The Academy regularly organizes practical legal courses, conferences, and international exchange programs to promote international legal talent exchanges. This will help consolidate Hong Kong's strategic position as an international legal and dispute resolution service center in the Asia-Pacific region, establish Hong Kong as a capacity building hub, and actively participate in the next decade of Belt and Road Initiative. To take forward this initiative, the Hong Kong International Legal Talent Training Office and the Hong Kong International Legal Talent Training Expert Committee, two pillars, were set up in October 2024. The Hong Kong International Legal Talent Training Expert Committee consists of 3 advisory boards comprising 17 eminent legal experts and scholars from renowned international mainland China and Hong Kong local legal organizations and universities as members to advise the Department of Justice of Hong Kong SAR. And I'm so delighted to see some of our expert committee members, our panelists, and the audience today. So what we have done during the past 6 months, I would like to share with you some of training programs that the Academy has conducted so far. In January this year, the Academy and the Supreme People's Court of the People's Republic of China co-organized the Hong Kong Common Law Practical Training Course. The 2 weeks training course was the Academy's first training program after its launch for 25 men and senior judges through lectures, panel discussions, and visits. So just want to call back for my comments for the question of this morning. Through these 2-week courses, we designed quite a number of sessions about the arbitration judicial review. Because for China and Hong Kong, if you have a close look on Asia Pacific, you have seen the recent endeavor of mainland China and Hong Kong to build itself as a legal hub and the arbitration seat. So the mainland judges, especially for those who dealt with the foreign-related cases, they're eager to know the Hong Kong's practice, the judiciary, the experience of Hong Kong judiciary, how to supervise and support arbitration, especially international arbitration. So I think this is a quite good story to share with our audience of the World Law Congress today. So if your judiciary, for example, if your government officers want to exchange your ideas, or if you want to learn other jurisdictions' experience on international arbitration, please come to our website and contact me. We can have more, tailor-made program for different jurisdictions. And the second training program was conducted in February 2025. The Academy worked with the Ministry of Justice of the People's Republic of China on the topic of a national training course for tenants handling foreign-related arbitration. So this is a special course for arbitration, and for around 80 participants from mainland in-house counsel, experienced arbitrators, lawyers, and arbitration practitioners through lectures, exchange, and visit for 2 weeks. On 14th March 2025, as my distinguished panelist Neale just mentioned, our Academy and the UNCITRA, where Neale is representing today, co-organized the conference on climate change and international trade law. The conference discussed how the international trade law can effectively support the achievement of the climate action goals set by the international community. So I'm so proud that for this conference, we have been attracting more than 600 participants participants from around 70 jurisdictions from Asia Pacific, Middle East, Latin America, Europe, and Africa. So for our upcoming training programs, please allow me to do some advertisement here. So the capacity building programs, NET Academy will organize various training programs later this month in Xi'an, mainland China, Europe with UNICARIBE in Rome later in July, and South Korea with Anseo, as just mentioned, end-to-end digitalization, and Hong Kong on the subject, including the Hong Kong common law and the dispute resolution, mainland civil and commercial legal practice, and the criminal prosecution. So last but not least, the Hong Kong Legal Week 2025 will be held from 1 to 5 December this year, during which Academy will organize International Capacity Building Conference in collaboration with international organizations, including the Judicial Summit, as Neale just mentioned. Please save the date. So you are welcome to join the Hong Kong Legal Week, to join our upcoming programs conducted in Hong Kong. And before I conclude my conclusion, I would like to introduce a Chinese old saying, 教学相长, which means the teachers and the students can learn each other through the process of a training program and capacity building. So as a training academy, you are welcome to join our training programs in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Ling. Thank you for introducing all these different programs of the Hong Kong International Legal Training Academies, and some of them are being held in Hong Kong or in different parts of the world. We welcome your participation. We still have a few minutes. We will take maybe 1-2 questions. So this gentleman.
Gracias, Martín Hidalgo, docente universitario. Quiero felicitarlo también porque por lo menos tienen una dama en su equipo de trabajo. Bien, miren, yo tengo una inquietud que se la quiero presentar al señor presidente de la República, al Estado Dominicano, y es con relación a la problemática de Haití. Problemática mundial que tiene Haití. ¿Qué pasa? He visto que ustedes tienen de cómo producir las actividades, cómo producir las actividades jurídicas a nivel internacional. ¿Qué yo pienso con relación a la problemática? Sin entrar en detalle, porque no da tiempo, pero Estados Unidos y Reino Unido de Inglaterra tienen 2 precedentes. Uno fue con la fundación de Liberia y otra con la fundación de Sierra Leona en África. Uno apoyado por Estados Unidos y otro apoyado por Reino Unido. Entonces, ¿qué pasa? Que todos aquellos esclavos liberados en Latinoamérica, ellos le crearon un espacio y le hicieron 2 repúblicas, Sierra Leona y Liberia. Yo estaba pensando, yo amo mucho a Haití. Cuando yo era jovencito tenía una noviecita en la Romana de mi país y yo le mandé un libro que decía Haití visto por dentro. Eso es para que ustedes vean que yo amo a Haití, que no es que lo veo con odio ni nada de eso. Entonces yo pienso que una forma importantísima fuera de solucionar el problema de Haití es trasladarlo a África. África tiene mucho terreno y fértil. Y entonces el territorio de Haití que ellos ocupan, dejárselo para ellos y que ellos lo conviertan en vía turística y el dinero que produzcan se le pase a ellos también para que sirva para su desarrollo. Entonces, como ustedes son tan expertos en todos estos asuntos, quién sabe pueden darnos alguna idea que ustedes crean que se puede hacer. ¿El cuánto? Gracias.
Gracias. I don't understand you much, but if Ignacio, you just respond in a minute.
So I don't think we can be very helpful because he just proposed that the problem of Haiti, which with so many slaves being brought here, and with the examples of Sierra Leone and Liberia, where slaves long time ago were taken to Africa, he suggests that the population of Haiti be taken to Africa. Él, a lo mejor entendí mal, pero es que a los extranjeros. Pero es que no tiene nada que ver con el panel, ese es el problema. It doesn't have anything to do with the...
But thank you very much, Garces. I think that the organizer is saying that it's time's up, but thank you very much. It's very interesting discussions. Hopefully we can have future discussions in other events. So just to conclude, could you join me to give a big round of applause to our panelists? Thank you very much, Garces.